Hi, everyone. So thank you all for being here. I wonder if you kind of answer the first question with maybe like a very short introduction to yourself as well, which is, can you perhaps share a recent investment case that you particularly like and how it kind of exemplifies your thesis, I guess? Will, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'm just thinking if I can talk about this one, because we're still in term sheet negotiations. But at a high level, we're really excited about this idea of bioresilience. So we think there's a lot of trends in the world that are moving towards reducing supplies, basically. And I think biology is a really good answer to this. So there's things where you see climate change, biodiversity loss, and geopolitical instability really affecting that. And as we talked about before, Denmark's a small country. We see the chance to do this well with biology. We're investing in the moment in a company that's doing upcycling of cobalt and lithium out of the battery space. So we're trying to collect rare earth minerals, which is something we don't have so much of in Europe, through a biological kind of catalytic process. So we're really excited about that. Yeah.
Do you want to go? Yeah.
Okay. I could tell about all of those 16 companies we have in our portfolio. Those are everybody is very, very exciting. But maybe one of the recent ones that will be actually published next week is a follow-on investment into one of our portfolio company that will start to build a factory, which is of course exciting when you have been following a company from like 3.5 years after the first investment. Then they had PowerPoint and some exciting stuff, and now they are starting to build a factory, which is amazing. Factory will be producing 3,000 tons per year, so we are talking like a really serious stuff here. So that is exciting to see the development.
That's fantastic. What company is that? Can you?
You will see it next week.
Okay. Ilona?
Yes, I might probably add a bit of different angle to that. We are not kind of totally focused on biotech, but we have several companies in biotech in our portfolio, and the one that I want to mention, I think was pitching today, it's company Logium. They are focused on producing a food additive actually to feed chicken with, and this additive fights Campylobacter in the gut system of the chicken. And this Campylobacter is really harmful for human body. So, and they are actually fighting it, and it comes along with the regulation that is there to decrease the number of Campylobacters in the gut system of the chicken. So that is one of our investments.
And then I guess going on from that, so what other opportunities are you seeing in a more kind of general sense? You said maybe waste or resource scarcity. Is there anything else that you're looking at, or is that giving too much away if you want to talk about like?
No, I'm happy to discuss. I just I think because we're in pre-seed investment primarily right now in seed, so we try and align a lot of the thesis with things that come afterwards. And there's an ESG kind of requirements in the larger funds, in the follow-on funds. So there is kind of a balancing act of what we think is really important on the bioresilience side for our kind of ecosystem, and then for the kind of matching up with like what Sophie Nova's doing and Nova Holdings and these guys. I think food, materials, and agriculture is where we're going to largely play because that's the area that they invest in. And I think that's just a pragmatic approach for us. If I'm excited about it, yeah, I'm pretty excited about materials. I think that's the one I like the most.
Is there anything within materials and any part of the supply chain you're particularly interested in, or is it just?
Yeah, I think this idea now that we have access to large databases and we can do kind of using combination of bioinformatics and de novo amino acids to build totally new sets of chemistries and biologies that can create new to the nature, new to world materials out of waste material. And I think that's going to really be exciting to see happen. And I think that's on the way. Yeah.
It's an interesting question, I realise, because obviously it says so much interaction, right? Like you almost mentioned 3 trends in one. So no, but that's, I think, exemplifies it's hard to just say like materials or food or ingredients. It's a bit of a question. Mika, how about you?
There are amazing materials to be reused for the food system. We just invested in a company that is capturing phosphorus and nitrogen from wastewaters, taking back to fertilizer use. So like removing those extra nutrients from where they don't belong to and actually utilize them where they are beneficial. That's one example of great materials that do exist already, but we didn't have any tools to reuse them before. And I'm really happy to see that kind of a development. We have another company that sounds like magic, but they are making organic fertilizers from recycled alkaline batteries. And if I learned something in my childhood, it was like don't throw batteries to nature. So amazing stuff.
How about you, Ilona?
Again, a bit different angle on that, as we are industry agnostic, and let's say we typically start working with scientists and entrepreneurs on a separate basis, and then we kind of bring them together, and different types of application can emerge of, let's say, one core competence of a particular scientific group. And let's say this, let's say, materials can be applied in different areas, including, let's say, agriculture. And for instance, we have startup that is actually have put an industrial prototype on Jurmala wastewater treatment plant. They are incinerating the sewage sludge, but actually what is the leftover of this sewage sludge? It's an ash and it has phosphor in it. So they are not focused on actually extracting this phosphor, but they can become, let's say, a nice synergy with someone who would wish to do so, and that's very precious thing for the agriculture. So that's kind of another example. So I see that there are lots of other kind of benefits from going into synergies between different types of companies also for the biotech.
And then I guess moving on from that a little bit, although I never think challenges particularly could also be opportunities, I guess maybe start at the other end. So Ilona, the kind of similar question, but what are the biggest challenges do you think as an investor you're facing at the moment? Like what's in it? Could be anything from the sector to the ecosystem to cash flow.
Well, I can start with that. I think challenges is the understanding the regulatory path. That's, I think, the biggest hurdle. I think startups start to realize this quite late, even though we tell about this from the very beginning, that they need to kind of understand that and plan for it, not just resources, but also time, because this is something that can stop them for a very long time. And this is something which is usually underestimated. And the second challenge, of course, is funding. I'm sure everyone understands that, because deep tech is long, but I think biotech is even longer. And let's say there are certain stages that do lack, let's say, funding instruments. Yeah, because let's say private investors and VCs not always are willing to invest, let's say, pre-revenue, but for such kind of startups, pre-revenue is quite long period of time. I will probably stop here. I'm sure colleagues have more to add.
Mika?
Well, we are investing in food technology, so food is always politics, and politics in food means protection, unfortunately. So that is probably the greatest challenge we have faced and our companies are facing. Of course, talking about novel food regulation, and it was discussed before here as well. So that is probably the biggest bottleneck at the moment. But in big picture, what comes to food value chain, the demand for different kind of solutions is growing all the time. Awareness of that is growing all the time, which means huge opportunities. There is money available, but round after round, it gets harder to raise the money. And when scaling up, building factories, you demand like 30 to 50 million euros to build a factory. How to get that money? There is no governmental support for it because they are supporting the current system. So I would really wish that like subsidies and governmental support would be based on sustainability, actually. Then it would be turned around. And if I can send my wishes to policymakers, please help us.
Do you see that changing, just to follow on for you, do you see that changing in any specific country in Europe? I mean, you're in the Nordics, like I feel like that's one of the more progressive ones.
Of course, in Finland we had a couple of success stories what comes to governmental support, and happy to see that. Of course, in Denmark there is also great initiatives, and in Estonia, happy to see the support there, but in general, it's a EU challenge.
Okay, yeah. Well?
I'm just going to add to that, actually. I think if you look at Europe on a whole, beyond just the Nordics, I think we don't have a unified biomanufacturing policy. And because of that, we have a kind of fragmented ecosystem that never achieves the scale that we need to reduce the cost of goods for our products to be competitive. And that's something where the US is a little sharper on, actually. And they have a strategy and they have a long-term vision, and they've introduced this Inflation Reduction Act, right, which has a lot of incentives for European startups, at least, to move their production there, which is, again, going to create that critical mass and manufacturing outside of where we would like to see it. So I think without that kind of thinking, I think that's a challenge on the horizon. Scale-up's always the problem, and I don't see it changing quite soon enough, maybe.
And I guess just another follow-on question. Will, you gave a great presentation, just thinking about like the wider ecosystem. So where do you see yourself in it, and how you envisioned yourself when you started, if you ended up having to take a role that you didn't want to do? And that is to everyone, but I guess Will, because it came off the back of his conversation first.
Yeah, I think my passion is, and it's always in the creation of things, the generative side of things. So we work on a generative kind of approach, which is we invest in talent, much more like Entrepreneur First and Antler, but focused on biotech. So I think that puts us in this kind of very early ecosystem area. And to get to there's a lot of attrition, and to get to the large scale you need, there's only a few business models that really work. So honestly, I'd rather not be an investor, but it's the only way in the current operating system to really get this whole thing to go to scale. I think if I was really passionate about the money, I would love it more, but I'm more passionate about seeing all these amazing solutions come online in the next 10, 15, and I think we need them in the next 10, 15 next years.
You're an altruistic investor, so.
I'm thinking strategically, how do we keep the consumer price index low enough in Europe to reduce this cost of living crisis in 2045? And what would that need today to get there? And I think, finance is definitely a tool to get there. Yeah.
Very forward thinking. Mika, how about you? Are you any role you've taken on that you didn't really expect to?
Well, I didn't expect that we would be talking about politics, spin-out politics, about researchers and university policies, how to spin out, because that is quite a challenge in many universities. The attitude towards spinning out and starting companies is something that I was not aware of. And I find myself usually in so-called tech transfer offices and talking about how do we enable actual business becoming true. Because our analysis when we started this fund was that there is exceptional research, but companies are not born out of that. We wanted to raise money to help to start the companies, but I didn't know that we will be the ones who are lobbying the spin-out policies. And I would really hope that there would be attitude change in that sense. And starting companies and really generating new revenue and jobs for societies would be one of universities' main goals. That would be really nice. And I think it's not my role to do it, but we are, of course, happy to do it at the moment, to be the lobbyists.
Ilona?
Well, we see our role as an ecosystem player it's our responsibility actually to contribute to the building of an ecosystem. First of all, let's say we source our startups not just from the market, but mainly through, let's say, our own creation process. It means that we also work a lot with universities, with tech transfer offices, and we understand what are the challenges. And we are sharing experience from different ecosystems, as we are not sourcing just from Latvia, but also from abroad, those scientific teams. And we have the beauty of kind of comparing different systems and also sharing this experience. And we feel that we should share because it improves the process and it creates the process which is smoother, which is much more comfortable for the scientists to go through, let's say for the tech transfer offices. This is number one. Number two, let's say looking from the point of view of the startups, We need to understand what is their journey, what are the stakeholders they need on this journey, be it an industrial partner, let's say a public entity that can provide some grant facility, or let's say some mentors, consultants that can help them along their way, and of course in industrial corporations. And that's our responsibility to help our portfolio companies, that all of these stakeholders that are around our portfolio companies. And let's say through these interactions, we also learn a lot, what can be improved, and we are usually happy to share this. And we're happy to share this with the policymakers, what we do here in Latvia, and not just here, also on a European level. And we feel this like our responsibility.
Great. I guess kind of also on the back of that, like how do you think we can improve kind of what is coming out of the great research institutions at the moment? I mean, is it a talent issue in terms of running businesses, or how can we make kind of startups even more investable than they are? What do people need to do? What are you looking for in a startup? A lot of questions there, sorry. Mika, do you want to start as I?
Well, first of all, I would really encourage startups to find the right investors who actually understand how long it takes for a deep tech company to deliver the revenue, because I have heard the discussions that some generalist investors are looking for revenue like next week. They are probably used to that in the gaming and digital business. So to have right investors who really understand the support, and then to companies, they have to understand that the value growth of the company is really essential, and that is enabled only by having clear focus on what to deliver, because you have to raise more money, you have to understand that you have to grow the value of the company to be able to raise the more money. So that is something that we, together, everyone, we should spread the word about the facts of investing in deep tech companies and what is the reality there.
Okay.
I might continue probably understanding the competences needed, the talent. Let's say startups should identify right away, let's say, what kind of competences they need. And I really like this Deep Tech Talent Initiative that is aiming to train, let's say, 1 million people in Europe in deep tech, and I hope, let's say, that some of these people will be in biotech, and they will be available for, let's say, for the companies to hire. That's another story. And one more aspect which is kind of, I think, vocal here is the certification regulation. Maybe more should be done from the ecosystem to make it more clear for the startups what is their journey, what is their path. Because I really see that there is a pain. I know that there are specific programs that focused on that to explain how to go the journey, but maybe more of such things should be available for those who dare.
Yeah, it's hard to follow. Good answers. I don't think like the universities are actually super accessible for a lot of people, and what I'm more excited about is seeing more people having access to the tools of science and participating in the bioeconomy and in deep tech for alternative avenues, and that can be through the kind of those accelerator programs that now like offer PhD / investment associate kind of roles, entrepreneur in resident roles. And I think it's because we've built a system that overvalues qualifications and undervalues capability. And if we can detangle those two, I think we would unleash a far greater number of the potential of our research base. Beyond that, we live in a time where we're no longer the only species that creates intellectual property, right? Not that AI is yet a species, but it's on the way to becoming one. It is. It's no longer just a domain that we can create intellectual property. Yeah. So I think we live in a time where there's going to be the cost of invention is going to go down, and so the accessibility hopefully will go up, and I think that'll disrupt at least the monopoly of some of the tech transfers on intellectual property across the world, but also in Europe. Yeah.
That's definitely a good point of philosophy, I guess.
I mean, if you put in ChatGPT and you say, come up with the inventive step for a biomaterial, right? How can you prove now in the European Patent Court system that the inventive step is beyond the skilled, someone skilled in the art, if it's already written out and published so quickly and easily?
Yeah.
You know?
And in terms of actual investments, do you tend to invest within your home countries, or how far afield do you look? What are you looking kind of in the Baltic states for? I mean, obviously some of you are based here, but do you tend to, how does your investment kind of geography look?
So currently we were investing only into Latvian companies mainly. That's because of the regulation of our current investment vehicle. But let's say for future funds, we do want to go beyond Latvia, but Latvia is our home market as well, so we will stay focused on it. But definitely CEE region is something that is of interest, and we see lots of science spinning out of the universities from there, and we see a lot of valuable technologies based on what new future startups can be built. So I think that's an opportunity for us. So that's a kind of our strategy.
We are based in Helsinki, but our first investment was in Denmark. So, but yeah, we are investing in Nordics and Baltics. Have a couple of companies in Denmark, a couple in Sweden, one in Estonia, and rest are Finnish. But as we are still the only one that is focusing pure on food technology, our foothold here in the home market, we call this home market, is pretty strong. But in the future, we will expand to Northern Europe kind of a investment strategy. So looking forward to see companies from Poland and Netherlands and Germany as well.
In terms of the investment, the investment vehicle is based on the Danish system, so the operating companies are always done through that. But the talent that we recruit comes from anyone who has an EU visa to work across the EU, basically. We don't yet have the capability to do non-EU visas, but we're working towards that. Yeah.
And I guess, kind of moving on to the big picture stuff, because I do like that. And I love what you were saying, Will, about kind of thinking about AI. What do you think the world, I mean, it's a very general question, but I'm always intrigued, what do you think the world is going to look like in 2050? Do you have a positive or a negative vision? I appreciate I've kind of sprung this question on you a little bit, and because I assume as investors you're trying to work towards a kind of better world. So what are you hoping for in 2050? Let's keep it as a positive kind of thought. Will, do you want to start, because you kind of you were talking a bit, or? Yeah,
I think because I mean the duration of a fund and the life cycle of a startup is 10 years if we're lucky, more like 15, 20 years till we see impact, right? I hope we live in a world where there is a good base of access to resources. That's my concern, I think. And I think we need I was at a talk in Germany, in Berlin, and the vice chancellor came by and he said, look, it's really nice that we have all this policy for climate change and sustainability, but it can't come at the cost of people's living, right? We can't take that out on everyone in the economy by pricing carbon up and increasing tariffs on things. So there has to be this balance of the economics. And I think what has to happen is that we have to go for a period where we buy enough time to become sustainable post-2050. But now we're in actually the situation where we need to really consider how we're going to supply the phosphates, the minerals, everything else, especially in Europe, because we're not a naturally very resource-rich continent, apart from the Norwegians. It's a bit of a challenge for us.
Yeah. Mika?
Well, there are estimates that 2050 we need double the food we consume today. So hopefully we can produce that with some new technologies, because due to climate change we cannot produce even the current amount of food with current tools. So we definitely need new technologies, and I'm really hopeful that policies will change and we will allow new technologies to enter food market as well. So the food system will be far more sustainable than today. And still we are eating delicious and wonderful food, because food it's in our daily lives and everybody loves to talk about food. So it's about good taste and experiences, and that will not change.
Well, I see that, let's say, also nowadays, the technologies are mixed and matched in different types of startups. And let's say, you mentioned AI. I see lots of AI solution being merged, let's say, with other deep tech things. And let's say, progressing this in the future, I see more and more of such kind of convergence of technologies. But speaking again about the future and maybe continuing a bit on you were saying about the impact, I truly believe that everyone who is developing something nowadays or will start develop should think, let's say, what will be the impact. And that's kind of our joint responsibility and everyone's responsibility. So we are not kind of solving the challenges, but we also need to think of how we are solving these challenges. So how we are not bringing more harm, let's say, with solving one problem and to another part of the problem. So this is something that should come as, let's say, as a hygiene nowadays. And it's impossible to go without that thinking beyond, because we have done a lot of mistakes and we need to learn from these mistakes. And let's say in the future, developments, this should be an integrated part. So that's kind of my take on 2015 view.
Yeah, I think how I interpret that is there's always good, and no technology is inherently bad or good, right? It's how we use it, and there's good things that happen in technology, but there's also bad things. So how do you kind of mitigate the bad things while making sure that we benefit? And I think you always have to embrace every part of it in order to show you fully understand it. So something in food tech I think we've seen a lot of is everyone's focusing a lot on the bad possible things, and there will be bad things, but how can we make sure that actually the world we live in embraces the good things? I've got a couple of minutes left. I don't know if anyone had any questions from the audience, because I know the Slido app, but I don't know if anyone wanted to put their hand up. And I can, yeah? And let me just repeat that, I think, which is, in a mature ecosystem, what's the significant amount of investment that we should see? Is that, did I? Oh.
So what was the amount that was invested?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the cumulative figures. And as I said, it's a 100-year journey to build an ecosystem. But I can point to the numbers that really kickstarted the current uptick, which was there was €500 million put into something called the Bioinnovation Institute from the Novo Nordisk Foundation, and that was the switch when we went from investing purely on the building side to investing more on the people side, and that created the incentive for all the universities and the academics to align more on going into the startup route, and because it was built towards that. I don't think you need that much money. I remember working in other organizations that had a much lower budget. iGEM comes to mind, where they had this kind of initiative to educate people and get things started, and their budget was nearer to 1 or 2 million euros to do so. And they have 5,000 members every year with 250 research projects around the world, creating, I think, 50 startup projects every season. So, you know, you don't have to have the money, I don't think. It helps, but it's again the catalytic part of bringing people together and forming the idea and that part, and then getting them ready to get money from VC, from grants, and so on.
Yeah, I would definitely support that. I think the idea of like having 500, 1 million grants, which obviously is a lot, versus 500 million, I think that, you probably prefer to have the 500, 1 million, because it gives you 500 chances. And I know myself, having worked in a food tech VC, which was a biggest one in the world, like we struggled a little bit because we almost were too big. We're too big for the space. Like finding opportunities ends up being quite difficult if the ecosystem hasn't actually presented itself with enough opportunities at the time. Even though the number of food tech companies has grown exponentially in itself, but it doesn't mean that the opportunities are quite there out of the seed into the A and B round. So I would say that I think the money is coming, and it's there, but I think grow at an appropriate speed.
I just want to add a comment because I was hanging out with this guy called Michael Jackson, who's a LinkedIn guy, talks about the US and Europe difference. And when we say we're going to change the world in Europe, we put 20 million euros behind it. And you hear about the same thing in the US, they put 20 billion euros behind it. And it's that kind of initiative that I think sometimes we could think a little, there's nothing wrong with thinking a little bigger or more ambitious.
No, that's true as well.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously I'm not going to turn down 500. But,
Yeah, true.
but I think we've run out of time, but thank you so much, everyone. And obviously, I think all the speakers are around if you want to grab them and ask them questions as well, and I'm sure they'll be happy. I'm just putting words in their mouth as well. Great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.